Hi, Marilyn here with Cotton and Chocolate Quilt Company, and we're in Saturday Sampler, and now we're going to be working on our applique. And the first thing that we need to do is make our bias stems. And I love the clover bias tape maker, and so this demonstration is how I make my bias stems using that tool. So the first thing that you do is you have to get strips on the bias. And with the fabric that we have, which is this beautiful stripe, the first thing that you want to do is be cutting off the selvage before you start. And so I cut off my selvage, and then once I have that off, I have it off on this side, then I will be folding this up edge to edge. So this side has the selvage cut off, and then just making a square out of whatever piece you have. This is a piece that's in your kit. And then cutting this off, and then you'll have a nice square, okay? So once you have that square, you're gonna be cutting that right down the middle, and that's what I've done here, is cut this right down the middle. And so I'll just kind of show you what that is. As I cut this right down the middle, there's my triangle here. So I cut that right down the middle, and there's my triangle. And this is on the bias, okay? And then I'll just fold this in half to make it easier to cut my strip, okay? So that's how you start. And out of that, of course, you get 2 strips. Now, you want to save the other side to cut more later, but make sure I fold them both at once so that when I go back to use my second half, both of my stripes are going in the same direction. Just a helpful tip when you're using stripes, so that if you're gonna make more of that beautiful outside strip and you need to connect them, you have them going in the same direction. Okay, so this is a 1/2 inch. So this is a 1/2 inch bias tape maker right here. You can see that's a 1/2 inch. And so in order to do that, we need to cut a 1 inch strip. And to remind myself, of course you get instructions with this, but I just remind myself by writing 1/2 inch, cut 1 inch. And I always just keep it on there for all of my tools. This is a 3/4 inch. And actually this is a 3/8 inch, and I cut a 3/4 inch strip. So I always just keep a reminder on all of my different tape makers. Okay, so I've already pre-cut this for the demonstration. And so when you do this, the best thing that you need to do is you need to put a little spray starch on these. So I have my flatter in here, and I kind of just jumble it up in a little pile, and I lightly spray it so that it gets wet. And that keeps it holding its shape once we put it through the tape maker. So now you do need a little bit of a pin that has some body to it. You're going to put and keep that nice beveled edge on the edge so that you can stick it through here and see it, and then take a pin so that you can put that point through, and now it's started, okay? And it's right side up through the tape maker, and then we can turn it over and you can see that it started, and you can see that it's already turning the point. And I'm just going to take that point out of the way. I have my nice hard iron. I'm going to put it down here, and it's already turning the edge. And I'm just going to let it set here and let it set the turn for a second, and then just lightly pull it through and hold it. And then I'm going to just pull it through here and hold it, and it's drying it. And then you can see that it's making my bias tape. Okay, and the reason that we have to do this on the bias is that we're making this beautiful curved stem, and it won't curve and lay very nicely if we don't have this on the bias. So that bias allows us to make a really pretty, nice curved stem. Now sometimes if you cut your strip, and I cut this on 1 inch, and if it's not pulling through here very nicely, you might have a little bit thicker fabric, and you might need to cut it slightly thinner. So once in a while, if I'm not sure of my fabric, I'll do 1 cut and test it before I do a bunch of strips. Sometimes you have to go down just, slightly smaller, but I did test this already, and 1 inch proved to be a good size for this fabric. I find sometimes that solids are a little bit woven a little bit thicker. Now, once in a while when I'm pulling this, if it gets a little bunched up and it's not pulling through right, you can always back it up and start over and then come back again, and then it will get right. And if it doesn't, well, that might be a part of the strip that you can't use, but generally they turn out to be pretty good. Now, if you need a very long strip, you can piece it together, open up the seam before you pull it through, and you can make a very long strip. In this particular quilt, these strips were long enough with the long pieces that we had. The piece that you're provided was plenty long enough to make these pieces. So I didn't have to piece any together, okay? And then we just go all the way through. Just hold it till it's pressed and the spray starch, and then there's our bias strip, okay? And just don't handle it a lot, just, you know, hold it nicely and let it dry nicely, and then I just kind of either roll it up like this and set it aside if I'm not going to use it right away, and then you can go and make a bunch of them until you're ready to use them. What I do want to mention, if you look at the center of my quilt, is that these stems are a little bit thinner than my outside stems, and I did do those at 3/8 inch rather than a half. It's not necessary. I just like the look of a little bit smaller stem in the center, and I happen to have a bias tape maker that's that size because I do a lot of applique. So you know, it's kind of your choice. And you know, if you like that look and you happen to have a tool that can make that size, you could also do it with fusible web and make those ones. They're pretty short, so you could do it with a fusible web and make it a little bit smaller, or just make it 1/2 inch. But if you're looking at my quilt and noticing that it does look a little different, you are right. So I am making the 1/2 inch, I mean the 3/8 inch right now, and it works exactly the same as a 1/2 inch. You can make, they make these from 1/4 inch up to big ones, a couple inches wide. They all work exactly the same. So it's just the choice of determining how wide you cut your strip to get it started. They also recommend at times using a fusible tape that you put through it. I'm not really in favor of the fusible tape. Instead, I'll use the like the Roxanne's glue base to glue it down, and I'll be talking about that in a minute, and that's how I glued all of my applique down with, rather than using the fusible tape. So, but it's just a personal choice, but for me it works much better than using the tape. So as you can see, as I'm talking, I've made my way across and have made this, and this is probably plenty long, I believe, for all 4, but that's how I made the 4 small ones with the 3/8. Okay, so have fun making your bias tape, and then next I'll be talking about the applique.